Do you know that Gollum and was it Green Goblin from Spider-Man? They're like the same person. No, they have like the same like Two-Face thing in the mirror.
Yes, they do have that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So who came first though? 'Cause now I'm trying to think. 2002. Which came out first? Two Towers or Spider-Man? Oh wait,
Well,
no.
no,
Spider-Man came out.
Spider-Man's 2001.
You
So
heard here first, folks. Lord of the Rings ripped off Spider-Man. We're back.
we're back.
We're
That's
back. Hey guys,
another
welcome
slam up.
back to another episode of Rhyme and Reason. I am one half of your co-host, Matthew Kearns. Over there is my other co-host, Sandy the Sandman Robinson. Sandy, how you doing?
Matt, I am so happy to be back. We took an extended holiday break. We've been busy this last little while, getting everything set up. But this is one of my favorite places to be. Rhyme and Reason is one of the favorite things that I look forward to. So I'm happy that we're back, and I'm extraordinarily happy about what we're going to talk about today.
Yes. And what are we talking about today, Sandy?
We are talking about the Lord of the Rings.
Yes, we are talking about the Lord of the Rings. The reason why is because, if you follow Take 3 for possibly extended amount of time, actually, I never really talked about it much on camera, that much.
No.
You'll know I was not the biggest fan of these films. It's not that I ever thought they were bad films, they were just films that never really hit me. Then in January, I decided one day when I was going to watch Heat on Netflix, I saw that Fellowship of the Ring was on there. And I always kept saying to my friends like Sandy and Kristen, Rob, and Malcolm, I was always like, well, the problem is, which is true, they're long movies, and it was just finding the time. And then I remember Heat's like an almost 3 hour movie, and so once I saw Lord of the Rings was on there, I'm like, I can't in good consciousness sit here, watch Heat, and still be like, oh, I have no time to watch Lord of the Rings. So I was like, fine, I'll watch Fellowship. So I watched Fellowship. I had an amazing time. It was amazing. And then that night, I watched Two Towers. And then the next day, I watched Return of the King. So in the course of 2 days, I watched all 3 movies. And I completely changed. Fantastic movies. So that's why we're going to talk about them today. We are going to be talking about favorite character, favorite movie. I don't even know what else. Maybe favorite scene. Favorite Hobbit toe. I don't know. We're just gonna talk about Lord of the Rings. Since Sandy is far more of the expert on this, I'm gonna let him run this one. So whatever he wants to talk about first, we can talk about.
Well, you know what, Matt? You brought up a really, really good point that, you hadn't seen them before, and movies nowadays, we all know they're getting longer. But the movies that really, really started that off again, because back in the day, yeah, we had, some long, really long classic movies out there like Gone with the Wind and Casablanca is very long. Some of the Citizen Kane, The Godfather is pretty long. But then we moved away and we got to this. We got into that sweet spot that I like that critics like to say is the movie studios. They want as many views as possible in a movie theater so they can make their money. So there's a certain sweet spot of how long you want your movie to be so that you can get the most turnover in the movie theaters. Peter Jackson decided that he was going to flip the bird at convention and say, you guys are all stupid. I'm going to put the best movie that I can possibly put out, and it's going to be long, and I guarantee you people are going to line up and see it. And he did that. Fellowship of the Ring came out in 2001, and by all accounts, and my personal opinion, a visually amazing movie to start off with. It is not just visually amazing once you get past it. The story is so good. It is
Mm-hmm.
so close to the books. I mean, there's always going to be changes when you're dealing with massive books like the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It really just is. I don't even like calling it the trilogy. I just like calling it Lord of the Rings because I consider it
Yes.
one big gigantic movie. I know that it's separated in three, and I know that you're going to force me into picking and do stuff, and that's okay. It's what we do. I dig it. But I really do, when I watch these movies, I really do try to block off enough time that I can watch all of them in succession. And sometimes that's tough, but usually I try to do it when I'm sick.
Well, if you remember the first episode of Rhyme and Reason, I talked about my favorite movie of all time, really, is, even though I say it's Empire Strikes Back, it's really the first 6 Star Wars movies. So I know
Yeah.
where you're coming from, I know. But since this is a show where we try to break each other, I am going to force you to choose your favorites. I'm
Right.
going to force you to choose between children, and because I'm just going to laugh. The other thing about just talking about the history behind it is also, when you look at the time period when these films were coming out, fantasy movies were not like they are now. It's like, again, Spider-Man came right around that time. It's a similar conversation with that movie, which is like, you have to go back to pre Game of Thrones, pre all this. That's the biggest fantasy thing I can think of that's like actually made money. You have to go back to the late 90s. Disaster movies are ruling the box office. Those are
Yeah.
some blockbusters. That's what people are making. That is where all the technology is going. And listen, you can argue that maybe some of those movies are subpar, but I actually think there are a couple of those that are actually really solid. Armageddon, Dante's Peak, Daylight are some that I like. But regardless of what you think, that was still what people wanted to see, and that was what studios were making, and they were also great vehicles for the technology. And then Peter Jackson decided he was going to bring back fantasy movies, and it wasn't like when George Lucas brought back Star Wars, he was filming Star Wars like he did the originals, which is, you do episode 1, then 3 years later you do episode 2, and 3 years later you do episode 3. This was, not only is he doing these big, epic fantasy films, he shot them back to back. That was the most in Hollywood, to my recollection before that, was the original production of Superman the movie. The original production of Superman the movie was actually Superman and Superman 2 were being shot at the same time.
Yep.
Actually, even more so than Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings was like, they did everything for Fellowship, and they did everything for Two Towers, they did everything. Superman the movie was literally, they shoot all the Daily Planet stuff for Superman the movie, then they shoot all the Daily Planet stuff for Superman 2. I know I'm talking about Superman. I'm losing a lot of you Lord of the Rings fans. Bring back.
No.
But the thing was this was just an unheard of thing. Is like all these actors, all these crew were just going to New Zealand for like 2 or 3 years to shoot all these movies back to back.
You're absolutely right, Matt. And and that's think about nowadays. Like what like this is like the commitment that these actors and these producers and these and all the back staff and all the other people, like, oh my God, like all of these people had to commit so much of their time to make this happen. And what happens is, when you get that type of commitment, when you get that type of all-in moment,
this is what you get. This trilogy is what you get. And I think it's so fascinating of like, this has yet to be replicated. No one has done this since. Like, you would think that after this, everyone would be shooting all these movies back to back. No one does, because it is... Listen, producing one film is... Listen, it's amazing that we get as many movies coming out as we do. Because when you actually look into how movies are made, it is insane. Like, I know it's easy, like, when you're a kid and you watch, like, the stunt featurette on the Indiana Jones DVD, it's like, oh, that's cool, but it's like, yeah, see, now before even they shot those stunts, there's some person in accounting who had to pay this stunt guy, and someone had to go out and find this stunt guy, and this stunt guy had to map out these fights, and then he had to train the actors and the stunt people to be able to do it. And even before that, there had to be a writer and a director and a producer, and then someone backing it at a studio, and then a studio that had to buy it. Like, it's the production of movies is insane when you look at it, and to think that you were literally telling these people, so you're gonna come to New Zealand with us for 2 or 3 years, and we're gonna shoot 3 movies back to back. Yeah.
And you're just talking the main people. You got to think the the casting director that was like casting all of these, like just the sheer amount of elves, dwarves, goblins, ghouls, things that are all over the place in that entire trilogy that they had to go out and find and say, hey, listen, guys, you're going to be in this disgusting slop of makeup for 3 years. This is what you're going to do. It once again just solidifies that if you do something all the way and you put everything into it, you get this type of product. And I like just, to bring it all the way back to this just amazing trilogy. We start off with the Fellowship of the Ring. And we start off with the history, of what this whole thing is all about.
Oh, we're just going through the movies now, are we, Sandy?
We're getting right into it. We're getting right into it because we can talk about everything else.
It is amazing when you look at that first trailer. Not even Fellowship; it's just for the whole thing, and it's just like I can't even imagine, being back in like a theater night in 2000, just like being like, Christmas of 2001, Fellowship of the Ring, Christmas of 2002, Two Towers, Christmas of 2003, and for them to, like, actually do it. Like, for them to, because it's like, you can sit there and you can be like, again, we live in this day and age of, like, we see schedules all the time where it's like, this movie's coming out on this day and this year, and then it's like, that day and that year comes, and then it's like, we're pushing it 2 years forward. But for them to legitimately be like, we're making these movies at the same time, they're being released a year apart, and for them to actually do it is amazing.
Well, and think about also what they were doing what somebody else was doing at the exact same time. 99, 2002, and then 2000 and 2005. So right in the smack dab in the middle of this, you have a Star Wars movie to contend with. Mm-hmm. And it didn't matter. Like, it just didn't matter. They said it, and they said, you know what? We're going to put all 3 of these movies out 1 year after the other. And what a revolutionary concept that was. To give us these movies one back to back to back.
You can sit there and you can argue about the quality of the prequels and the dialogue and all this. But I will say, though, when it comes to technology and filmmaking, I think Peter Jackson and George Lucas have to be commended for the trilogies they did are the reason why we're getting movies we're getting now. Because of what they did in the early 2000s with each of their respective trilogies, it forced people like ILM and other companies to really have to step up their game and create technology that, like, was never seen before.
Hate Jar Jar all you want, guys, but as the first digital actual acting character that had lines and story to show up, guess what? Without that innovation, how much of the Lord of the Rings trilogy is gone? You don't have the Witch King, you don't have Gollum, you don't have Sauron, you don't have the list goes on and on.
It'd just be different. Like you look at behind the scenes, it's like originally Gollum was gonna be this puppet. It was, it was gonna be like Yoda. It was gonna be a puppet. Like, that's how you did that stuff. But it's just, I just found that so fascinating when I really looked into just like, wow, you gotta give Peter Jackson George Lucas credit. And you can sit there and you argue which you think is better, but the point is still what they did for filmmaking is amazing. But we, as per usual, digress. So let's get into it. So which do you want to talk about? Movie first, and then character, and then scene, or which order would you like to do it in, Sandy?
Let's do movie first.
All right. Would it be easier for me to go first while you sit there and try to pick between your children?
uh no, my for me, for me, it's actually when I have to pick, I almost always come up with a different answer. What it is, it's all about how I'm feeling that particular day, or which one I watched last.
Let's see how
And
Sandy is feeling on this particular
and
day.
so today, if you're asking me what you are, of what I would consider
So,
my favorite Lord of the Rings movie right at this moment, um, I have to go. I have to go Return of the King, because it just gave me everything that I wanted. Was it a little bit longer than I wanted it to be theatrically? Um, yes, but the edition of Return of the King is so much more awesome. It is
yeah.
so good. You get all of the backstory with the ghost prisoners. You get all of that. It's such an involved movie. I love happy endings. Every single person that knows me will tell me, will flat out tell you, Sandy likes. I'm a traditionalist. I like a nice story, some conflict, the heroes getting over that conflict, finding a
Yeah,
way to
I'm,
do
I'm
it,
with you.
and
I
getting to
like.
the end, and Aragon being crowned, and Frodo, them all bowing to Frodo and the hobbits. I love that. Them back in the Shire having a drink. I love that. I love seeing that kind of stuff. That's what makes me happy. And that's what Return of the King gave me. It gave me, like, how, I mean, I know we're going to talk about our favorite characters, but I'll
Uh-huh.
bring, how do you sit there at the Black Gate, surrounded by every bad thing known to humankind, and just run towards the gate because you're going to fight everybody, and it doesn't matter if you get slaughtered. You're going to do what's right, and you're going to
Mhm.
do. How good is that scene? How good is that scene? And
Yeah.
for it all to have worked out the way that it did, wow. It just visually and cinematically, it is so amazing to watch that movie, and it gives some of the best performances in the entire movie. I think that Gimli in Return of the King really shines out. He's really important in that movie. But I mean, Aragon is by far, he's the king. He's the king of kings. He's the, it's what he does.
I think the Bible would disagree with you on that one,
Well,
Sandy, but.
yes, but we're not gonna. You know what? The one thing that rhyme and reason never is theological.
What
So
are you talking about? Did you guys see that top 12 Christmas episodes? I'm nothing but theological.
and that's a Christmas episode. That's right,
Still one of my
absolutely. But
favorite episodes. Um,
yes,
yeah,
I'm not sure our belief system is the same in the Lord of the Rings. So when I say the King of Kings in the Lord of the Rings, I am not therefore slamming the
I
King
might
of
just leave this
Kings.
whole
Or however,
conversation in. I
that's
don't know. Or
I
I might
blame
delete
you.
it.
It's your fault.
Hey, you said it, and I'm like, I don't know, because in junior woodchuck Bible school, they told me Jesus was King of Kings, but I
I'll,
might cut
I'll
this.
have
I
to
don't
do
know.
I'll have to do some extra Hail Marys at church on Sunday. So,
I'm a
but
Lutheran, so we don't do that. We're a
that's
lot
right.
more
No,
like
but I,
that.
I mean, yeah, if you're gonna ask me right now, what is my favorite movie, and the reasons why, Return of the King
Return of the
is,
King.
and it's because it's just the accumulation of all the hardships that they've gone through in the first two movies and in the third movie, and it
It's the
gets to that
happy ending.
place. It's the
It's the
happy ending.
happy ending that you don't really get in the other two.
It's the right ending. It's the way it should
Hmm.
have ended. And I mean, we can discuss at a later point, like that last 15, or so minutes. But
No,
um,
but we can talk about it now. Just I think Return of the King is a fantastic movie. Um, I would probably rank it third for me.
wow.
The problem is it's not that it's not a fantastic movie. I think the problem is because it's the last in the trilogy. It has that issue of it has to wrap up all the story, and it does it so well. Whereas the other two get to be the adventure that's like, oh, it's gonna keep going, and then it's like it's like Fellowship of Two Towers is doing this, and then it gets to Return of the King, and then Return of the King finally has to be like resolution. That's the problem, is that it wraps everything up, but because of that, and it's an amazing movie. And listen, when you rank, the Lord of the Rings movies, it's not like here's one, here's two, here's a pile of shit, and then here's three. Like, it's like here, So yeah, but I don't mind the multiple endings, as people like to call it, because I get that there's because my thing is, taking any one of them out, you lose something. Like, you need to show Sam and Frodo being rescued by the Eagles, because then it's like, well, how did they get down from Mordor? Or Mount Doom. I'm sorry. Well, maybe, okay, but one that you... No! I was like, the one you can maybe get rid of is Frodo waking up in the bed, but you need that because that's when he sees that Gandalf's come back, and is Gandalf the White, and is alive, and not dead. And then, of course, you need the coronation for Aragorn that completes his character. Arwen, they finally get to be there. You have that amazing moment of you bow to no one. Like, you really do need everything. And then, of course, it leads into a song that I literally bought, like, the day of, once I saw Return of the King, which is Into the West. I bought that. It's on my phone. I listen to it a lot. It's a wonderful, wonderful song to end the series with. Like, it is beautiful, beautiful song. And then that last scene is really, going to the West. It's just like, well, here's the journey's done. And it's sad. But my favorite Lord of the Rings movie is Fellowship of the Two Towers of the Return of the King. That's my favorite. No, my favorite is Two Towers. My favorite is Two Towers.
Nice.
I think because Two Towers to me was this really, really fascinating movie of when you get to... Listen, I love all the stuff with, like, Frodo and Sam meeting Gollum, and do they trust him, do they not? And then, like, he really is the only one who can lead them to Mount Doom. And then, of course, Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli, their whole thing. But it all leads to Helm's Deep, which I think is just, like, this fascinating thing of, if we could just survive the night. If we can just survive the night, we're going to be okay. And, of course, the cockiness of the king of, like, no one's ever broken down the walls until it's, like, literally too late, and then you realize the one weak point in the structure, and it's just, like... And then, of course, they're holed up in the caves, and then they're like, all right, it's ride or die time. They get on the horses, and then, of course, it's daylight, and Gandalf has come, and he's brought the army, and it's just, like, it's everything about that movie leading up to Helm's Deep I think is so good. There's so many great character things in that, and yeah, it's just, it's such an amazing movie. It's such a fun adventure, and then I like how it ends off with, like, we're going to Mordor now. Like, this is what we have to do. Now we're going to Mordor. So yeah,
and they give you and I love that you picked this as your favorite. This, like I said, every one of these movies flip flops into my number one. All the time. But deep down, deep down, Two Towers is the one that ends up first more often than not because of Helm's Deep. I love that battle so much. I love the rain. I love how it starts. Everybody's so nervous, and you got that old guy holding the bow and arrow there, and he just loses his grip on it, and it slips, and he flings it off and pegs off one of the orcs in the head, and then and everybody's just like, oh shit, and then that starts everything off. And if what would have happened if that dude would have waited for like 10 more minutes or 15 more minutes, or would they have? Yeah, it's who knows, right? But that's what
the one thing people I've heard they have problems with is, like, they call it mosh pitting, like there's too many of, like, jumping. But I love that. I love that bit when Gimli and Aragorn go around and they just jump and they're just taking on the whole arm. It's
Well,
it's sweet.
and such it's such a dark moment, but there's that levity that's in the movie that is so important in this movie, and it happens with all of the characters. Like you have Gimli um
Legolas with
and Legolas with the countdown, of
you
how many
know,
with the counting of how many people they've killed. Then you've got that scene that you talk about. Gimli and Aragorn go over onto the bridge, and that Gimli knows. He just looks up. He's like, "You're going to have to toss me," and he's like, "What?" And he's like,
hard to
"I
have to
can't
toss
I
me.
can't make the jump. You're going to have to toss me." He's like, "Are you sure?" And he's looking down with a little half smile on his face. He's like, "Of course I am. Don't tell the elf." And he chucks him over there, and they start whooping ass on it.
Yeah, it's
So
amazing.
there's so many little points about that levity that take you. It doesn't take you out of the movie. It brings you further in because with
It
those little moments, you love those characters more, and you
it
want to
is
see them safe.
the thing is all those little character moments feel genuine, and they're that real
Exactly.
genuine comedy of without it, this is a really, really depressing thing.
And dark.
It does present the issue of I was watching a review of Two Towers, and it did present that issue, which is just one of those funny fantasy things, which is like how strong are women because it's like we need every able-bodied man, and we got like children being given swords. It's like I think there's a couple of fully grown women could probably take those swords and go to town, but okay. Like
And
it's
I
just
mean,
one of those funny fantasy things that
it is.
you just have to sit there and go, okay, that's just because it all leads up to which is a pretty freaking for Awen in Return of the
It
King. Like
is.
it's all for stuff like that. Which by the
It
way,
is. And
you definitely
and I.
know this, but like Erwin was supposed to be in that battle, right? Which
Mhm.
is why wasn't she?
Well, Arwen herself, is a bit of a amalgamation of a couple of characters in the Lord of the
They
Rings
make her
themselves.
part
So
bigger in the
they
movies. I
make her
know
part
that,
bigger. So,
which I'm fine
um,
with because it's
and I'm
it's
fine with it too.
greasy
And I
from
and I, and I
Armageddon.
had no problem with Liv Tyler's characterization of that character. I thought she played a great
I
role.
thought her and Viggo Mortensen had they didn't get a lot of screen time together, but they had very believable chemistry.
But when they did have screen time, and that was something I was going to bring up about the Two Towers, one of my favorite scenes
The river.
is the river, is
Yeah.
when Aragorn goes and fights that one and gets tossed over, drops the jewel, from his thing, goes over, and his horse comes in and rescues, but he has that waking dream moment with Arwen, and they have that
Mm-hmm.
great conversation, and she finally just says, okay, it's time to wake up, and he wakes up, and then he gets on the horse and makes it back in time, which is just an amazing feat to begin with. He's injured. He's fallen a million feet to the ground. He's been like wet and slogged, and he's got to now take this horse ride all the way to Helm's Deep while still staying in front of the huge freaking 10,000 deep army that's about to like converge on Helm's Deep.
It's
It's
yeah,
such
it's
a
so
good
cool.
movie, and I like to, because you and I are such huge fans
Mm-hmm.
of Empire Strikes Back. There is no way you can't say that the second film in the
It's
trilogy doesn't have a lot in common. Not scene for scene in common. I mean, like
theme
how you
wise,
how you
it
theme
is
wise, how you feel throughout it.
it's the classic trilogy thing, which is the second
Bad
movie is
guys
usually the
win.
darkest. You see that with Empire, you see that with Temple of Doom, you see
Temple
that with Back
Doom,
to the Future Part
back.
2. That tends to be because it's the the way I've always looked at trilogies is they are a play. A
Yeah,
play is usually, well, a lot of times it can be 2 acts, but most of the times big plays are 3 acts. Most of the time what happens is the first act, you get introduced to all the characters, get introduced to the world, and you go on a bit of adventure, break. Second act, you come in, all the characters are established, now let's put these characters through hell. And it's gonna
Bender.
end with some big reveal, some big mistake, something, break. Then you come back. Act 3 is the resolution of everything. It's solving the conflict. It's fixing the mistake. It's finding the key. It's whatever. And then it's, you know, big happy ending, unless it's, like a sad play. But regardless, like that is how it's supposed to work. And Two Towers does that extremely well
Yeah.
of, yeah. So Do you have anything more you want to say on Two Towers: The Return of the King, or do you just want to?
I think it's important that that we bring up Fellowship. I think Fellowship
Yeah, that
is
was going to be the next thing. Was
yeah.
let's just
I
talk
think
about
it's
Fellowship.
let's just talk about Fellowship right now because I mean, like I said,
It's my second favorite. It's my
it could
second favorite.
easily be my
It's
number
so
one
good.
depending on when I watch it. Like I
So
said,
good.
it's so good. I love. I love, like I said, the whole beginning with Galadriel and talking about like this is what happened in the past and this is all these people came together and they had a chance to destroy the ring and Isildur said, "Screw you, I'm
I
taking it."
it's so the opening of that movie is for someone who I've never read. The only Lord of the Rings book I ever read was The Hobbit. So for
Yeah.
someone who never read the books to now I have seen the films of course, but I haven't watched them in quite a while, to be reintroduced to the world, it is a very good, like, I understood exactly. There were 9 kings, they all had these powerful rings, and then there was I always get them mixed up. It's not Saruman, it's Sauron. Sauron.
Sauron. Yeah.
Sauron had the most powerful
So
ring of all. He had this giant army, the armies of men and elves and
dwarves.
dwarves all joined together to battle him. It looked like we were all out for the count and then lost the ring. Like, it's all, and you understand immediately, and you see what happened to the ring. You know that at the very end it came in possession of it came in possession of um, I can't
Gollum.
remember of Gollum. I can't remember his
Smeagol.
Smeagol. It comes in possession of Smeagol, and then of course it comes into possession of Bilbo Baggins, and then that's where it hits our story. That's where our story begins. Is in possession of Bilbo Baggins, and you understand completely. This is the world we're in.
They did something in 20 minutes of the opening of that film of this trilogy that so many movies get wrong when it comes to origin. You don't have to treat your audience like they're stupid. You just have to give them, here's where we are. This is what's happened in the past, and this is where we are. Now the story starts, and you're going to watch everything all by yourself. And then like, so you don't have to continually harken back to like, but why? Oh, that's why. Oh, what are those things that are chasing? Oh, that's who they are. You don't have to do any of that because they give that to you in 20 minutes of the opening of the film. So you're completely versed in everything that's going to come next, and anything that's not hasn't happened yet. So they don't know. So we don't know either. So we're learning at the same time. Fellowship does such a good job of it. I will say one of the things of it could have gone the way that a lot of first installments go, that where you have like, I mean, I hate to keep bringing up Star Wars, but at the end of Wars, they blow up the Death Star, they go and they have their big ceremony and everybody gets crowned and gets their little things and everybody's like, yay, cheer, cheer, cheer. That doesn't happen at the end of Fellowship. Fellowship, they have this massive battle, and it's so good. And Boromir gets
Well,
his redemption.
don't say anything about that because we're talking about that scene in a little bit. I will agree with you that Lord of the Rings, unlike a lot of other film trilogies, has the advantage of knowing that it's going to continue.
Yeah.
Like Star Wars, George Lucas did that because he was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be allowed to make any more of these, so I gotta enter. Back to the Future, Bob Zemeckis and Bob Gale, except for Romance in the Stone, every movie they made was bombs. They were like, yeah, we don't know if they're gonna let us make any more of these movies. Whereas Lord of the Rings was like, yeah, those
Making
three
all.
successful novels. Yeah, we're making all those into movies at the same time, so I think we can end on a cliffhanger. It's gonna be okay.
And not even on a cliffhanger, but on a sour, like on
like a sour note. Like
it's a dark. It's still dark.
Fellowship literally ends with Frodo seeing that this fellowship that was supposed to go to Mordor and destroy the ring can't do it.
Nope.
Like this fellowship that the entire intent, the entire creation was to journey to Mordor, destroy the ring together. and him realizing that he's the sole person who can do it. Like, that's just, and Merry and Pippin are taken by the orcs, and Sam has followed, and
Almost drowned.
And Boromir is dead. Gandalf is dead, and it's just like we are royally
screwed.
Screwed.
And like I said, I definitely knew when I said Star Wars with A New Hope, I definitely knew that I needed to make sure that I conveyed that, yeah, George didn't know that he had an entire trilogy set up, but he didn't know if he was ever going to make another Star Wars again. So that's why it ended up so nicely and tied. Peter Jackson went into Fellowship knowing that he was doing Two Towers and Return of the King next, so he could do exactly what we wanted to see. We didn't want to see that cookie cutter ending. We wanted to see that there was conflict that would make us want to come back and see what happened in Two Towers. We wanted to see conflict and darkness in Two Towers. That's why we came back to see everything in Return of the King. That's why Return of the King is so important, because it ends on that great note, because we've been so ground down with all of the hardships that they've had to go through, that we needed that happiness.
You need that happiness to end. It's it's funny. Not Ralph Bashki, I was trying to say. Don Bluth said, he was talking about American Tail. He said that you can put kids through almost anything so long as you have a happy ending.
That's right.
And have you seen American Tail? That movie, for a kid, screws with your emotions, and it puts Fievel through so much, but then at the very end, spoilers, he gets reunited with his family, and so it's like, all right, fine, I guess it's okay. I guess.
Like, yeah. Spoilers, it's like 30 years old. Go watch it.
Spoiler, if you haven't seen An American Tail, what are you doing? It's one of the all-time great animated movies, and
that's not Disney.
Yeah, that's not Disney, and it
exactly
screwed with my psyche. That and Dumbo.
Yeah.
There's a reason why.
Dumbo.
There's a reason why I'm not seeing the live action Dumbo. I can't be put through Dumbo again. Oh god, that's another reason entirely of why Dumbo screwed with Matt. I'll probably tell Sandy off the call.
It's you know what? It's probably something that when it comes closer to its release date that we're actually going to talk about, because Dumbo is one of my favorite animated movies. Not just because of the movie itself, but because of how emotional it made me. And I watched it as a little kid too. But exactly.
The whole point is having not attacked on happy ending, but just like if you have a happy ending, you can put people through almost anything. But speaking of that, the people in these movies,
absolutely.
Ton of them.
There's a lot.
There's heroes. There's villains. There's people in between. But which are the best? Which are the ones that speak to us the most? I'm going to let Sandy go first, because kind of already talked about who is your favorite Lord of the Rings character from the trilogy.
It's like trying to pick, who's your favorite kid. I don't. I mean, the easiest answer for me to give is the character that I relate to the most. Not because we have parallel lives or anything like that, but because of the heroicness of it and the person that I would want to be. Mm-hmm. For like not deep dive purposes, I will say Aragorn is my favorite. But I think that group of three is truly my favorite character. I love Aragorn. I love Gimli, and I love Legolas. Those three together make this trilogy for me. They make me very happy. Them together, the banter that they have, the humor that they have, the fights that they fight together, the love that they share with one another in such a short time. It reminds me a lot of some of our fan community people. Like Matt and I haven't known each other for very long, but I love Matt like a brother. So that's I would go into battle with Matt.
Be a neighbor
any day of the week. No,
I'm kidding. I like it to say. My favorite thing of that is Sandy starts this off of like, My favorite movie is really the trilogy, and then a simple question: who's your favorite character? Really, my favorite character is 3 characters. Nothing can ever be easy with Sandy and Lord of the Rings.
Rule of 3, guys. It's the rule of 3. You guys know
What
what
do
I'm
you?
talking about.
Oh,
But
God,
no,
it's rule
I
2.
can't do it. I can't just
It's
pick
not.
one
No, I'm
because
just busting your
one
chops,
character
Sammy.
isn't as good if you take the other ones away from it.
I
And
guess
his arc is still going to be okay, but it's so much better when you add those other 2 elements into it.
it's
But
true.
if you're going to push me,
Adding,
if
yeah,
you're going to push me, I will say that my favorite character consistently is Aragorn. He's so Viggo Mortensen plays him so well.
yeah.
And let's be honest, nobody really knew Viggo very much. Before the Lord of the
No
Rings.
one knew
He
most of
had
these people for Lord
nobody
of the
knew most of
Rings.
them. That's right. Liv Tyler was probably the
Liv
more
Tyler
famous.
was Liv Tyler, Ian McKellen,
John Rhys Davies had been
John
around
Rhys
for a while.
Davies,
Sean Astin for
and
a while.
I forget his name. He plays Mr. Smith in the
Oh,
Matrix.
that's it's why can't I remember? Hugo Weaving.
Hugo Weaving. They were probably the biggest names in the movie.
Yeah.
I would say when the movie came out, they were probably the biggest names. And even, but I think that's kind of why the movie works. I think Harry Potter works a lot in the same way.
It does.
Of you have people who might not be the biggest names, but that's good because I mean, you look at something like Mission Impossible. Most of the Mission Impossible movies, it Ethan Hunt's not really 3 and Fallout for me are really the only ones when Ethan Hunt is a character. Besides that, it's kind of just Tom Cruise being Tom Cruise, which is cool, but it still is
Yeah.
it's Tom Cruise. Like I don't watch going, oh, that's Ethan Hunt. I go, oh, that's Tom Cruise doing that. And I think that's why Lord of the Rings works, is because they went with people like Viggo Mortensen and Orlando Bloom and all these people who no one really knew. And then because of that, you believe they were just the characters. It wasn't an actor playing a character; it was the characters.
That's
I
right.
think,
And everybody, like everybody in this trilogy has their moment to shine. Like
yeah,
everybody does. Like
they
that's
all
one of the
get
beautiful
one,
things
at
that
least one moment.
exactly. Peter Jackson did an amazing job with such a huge cast to give all of the main characters, and there's a lot of them. If you take like all the main characters, the list that starts at the top of my head and ends at my elbow. There's so many of them, but he does a really great job of giving them all an opportunity to shine at one point or another by themselves, not just as groups, but by themselves. And I think that that's really great. Like we get, Eowyn has that great moment. Faramir has that great moment. Boromir has his moment. And let's not say two of the greatest scenes in the entire trilogy. Two of the greatest scenes in the trilogy. I know we're going to talk about our favorite ones, but
Yeah,
two of the greatest ones are Boromir's fall and the talk that Boromir has with Aragorn in the
yeah.
in the cave of the shards. It's so like there's so many good moments in these trilogies that you put them all together and you get a great trilogy. But Matt, who's your favorite character?
So
In
it's
this
funny you talk about that scene because those are my 2 favorite characters. Aragorn and Boromir are my 2 favorite characters in Lord of the Rings. I know Boromir isn't in the whole trilogy, but he, he was so good.
Such an impact.
He was
Such an
so good.
impact.
He was so good, and he's so good because, and it'll kind of lead into my maybe my favorite scene. But the thing I'll touch quickly on Aragorn just because you said so much. He's such a great character. I like that you believe him as this ranger and everything who kind of left the sort of life that he maybe should have had, and then you believe this journey giving him the strength to want to be that leader and that king, and that amazing moment when the Sauron and the dark stuff is talking to him, and then just for Frodo, like, and he's prepared to die for everything. It's amazing. He's such a great character. I love the arc he has of going from like he kind of just cares about doing good, but it's it's kind of just like a noble thing to where it's like actually by the end it's like he's willing to die. Like that's what he says. He doesn't say for the ring, for humans. He says for Frodo because he cares far more. It's less a duty and an obligation, more something he wants to do. Boromir, however, is such an amazing character because he is a conflicted character.
Yeah.
And you understand it so well from the first scene with him. You know, when they're all, well, not the first, you know, like you understand it in the Cave of the Shards, the conversation he has with Aragorn, and then when they're talking about the ring, and I know it's in, you know, and he's just like, my people are dying every day to hold back Mordor. We need to use this ring to destroy him. And I love, and that's why it makes sense that he gets tempted by the ring. And his intentions are pure. Like, yes, he's going to try and steal the ring, but, like, his intentions are at least pure. Like, he doesn't want to steal the ring for power for himself. Now, you can't argue he could have been corrupted by the ring and, you know, all this, but his intentions of taking the ring were at least pure. But the thing I love the most is that scene when he's trying to take the ring from Frodo, and Frodo puts it on and turns invisible. Immediately, once he's gone, he realizes what he's done. He realizes, oh my god. Like, that's why he's screaming out for Frodo. Like, he knows he just screwed up. And it's I love Boromir so much.
It's so good because the ring actually does. The ring knows that it can't corrupt Frodo, so it branches out to try to find others to corrupt. And the easiest person that it finds, not because he's weak, but because he's desperate. His Gondor is dying, and it's they're only dying
every day. And
so the
just
ring
wants it to end.
And the ring. So the Boromir and gives him these thoughts, these visions in his head of him being able to, you know, use the ring to save his people, and that's because you're absolutely right. He is given this opportunity. This ring will save his people, and he's conflicted because he knows that it's got to be destroyed, but he knows that he can use it, and if he uses it, he can help save his people, and that's the power of the ring. The ring is corrupting Boromir. It isn't that he's a bad person. He's a hero, just a desperate one. And when you're desperate, you're easily corruptible. And when as soon as Frodo puts on that ring, it stops the power.
It's kind of like, you know, imagine if, this is going to sound like a weird comparison, but it's kind of like, imagine if you're walking in, you know, New York City, and it's pouring rain, like torrential downpour. You don't have, like, an umbrella. You don't have, like, a hoodie. You don't have anything. You have, like, just the lightest jacket in the world you're wearing. Torrential downpour. You don't have a car. You're just walking. Someone's selling umbrellas for $50. You're susceptible to giving that person $50 for that umbrella.
That's right.
To be able to stop your suffering.
That's right.
That's exactly what's happening with Boromir. But, and this will now lead to favorite scenes, what made him my favorite character was actually his end. So I'll take this first. It's so hard to say because there's so many amazing. Battle of Helm's Deep, I'll say, is a fantastic scene. Of the opening of Two Towers, Gandalf's battle with, I guess that's the opening, the battle with the Banshee? No, not the Banshee. What's his name? Battle with fire horns, guy. It's pretty cool. Sandy, I thought you.
Yeah, no. I got what. Oh, the Balrog.
The Balrog. I knew it was a B. The battle with the Balrog is sweet, but my favorite scene is from Fellowship. It's Boromir's death, because that. I was like, that's a hero, because he's, you know, he comes in, he's just swinging away, fighting off all the orcs, and then the freaking head orc pulls the arrow, launches it into his chest, and Boromir keeps swinging at the orcs. Second arrow to the chest, he keeps swinging. It takes the third arrow to put him down, and I was like, that is a freaking hero. And that's when I was like, he's not a villain. He didn't want to take the ring for power for himself because anyone who is less than a hero after one arrow would have dropped the sword and been done. He keeps swinging, and you know what? I bet you he would have kept swinging with 6 arrows in his chest. Like, he just would have kept going, and it is just it's so perfect, and it's such a poetic end to that character of just like he goes out like the hero that he actually was. Like, he had this moment of weakness, but at the end of it all, he was a hero, and he joined this fellowship because he wanted to help people.
It's why I always call that scene the redemption of Boromir. I know a lot of people like to call it the fall of Boromir, but I always call it the redemption. Because for me, the redemption of Boromir is so much more important to this film franchise than the fall of Boromir, because he knows that he's lost Frodo. He knows that he scared Frodo off and that he did a terrible thing. He has to live with that. He understands that he has to live with that. But then he sees 2 more of these hobbits that he has sworn to protect on their journey.
That he became friends with.
That he became friends with. He was training them. One of the best scenes is that, they're on the rocks before the crows come, and he's training them, and they beat him up and they knock him to the ground, and he's laughing and he's cuddling with them and having a great old time. That is the Boromir that I love. That's the Boromir when he's the hero Boromir, when he's not being corrupted by this evil ring. That's the Boromir that I always remember. That's the Boromir from the books that I love so much. That's the person and that's why it's the redemption, because he jumps in there with absolutely no doubt in his mind that he's going to die. But he's going to protect Merry and Pippin till his last breath. And it takes such that orc with that bow, putting those arrows, those bigger, thicker, sharper arrows into Boromir 5 times is stupid. That he was still able to get up there and fight and take enough of them out that Aragorn can come up and help this fight, and then tell him that he's his brother. Get him cleaned up, put him on his shield, put him on the river, and send him on his way for a hero's burial.
Yeah, he gets a hero's
burial. It is so poetically awesome that it's one of the reasons. It's not just one of the reasons. It's probably the reason that Fellowship jumps up to my number 1 spot every so often, because whenever I see that scene, it just jacks me up, man. It gets me so invigorated that I love it so much.
Yeah, I don't know why Fellowship is my favorite, or how much I love Boromir, but yeah, that scene, that is a hero's death. So Sandy, what is your favorite scene?
Yeah, there's so many that I love so much. But if I'm going to pick a scene that is my favorite scene out of the entire movie, it's the entirety of the Helm's Deep battle. I love the Helm's Deep battle for everything that it is. Like I said earlier, there's some moments of levity. Even when the old man flings off the arrow, it's by accident, and it's funny because that orc just gets it right in the face, and it's so good. And then the cheering and the chanting stop, and they all look and they're like, shit, and it goes over there to when to when the elves come, and Aragorn is just like, I don't care why you're here, just I love you so much, and he gives him like the big hug, and he's just like, and the elves smile, and it's so good too.
I'm still trying to imagine if that was Arwen.
Right?
Could have been one of the best movie kisses of all time.
It would have been literally, yeah, like it would have been stupid.
Screw you, studio, who didn't let Peter Jackson put her in that scene.
Yeah, exactly. But I like, to Theoden, who at this point has been pretty, been pretty mired. Like he's been corrupted by, by Wormtongue. He's in his dark, his son dies. He's depressed. He's upset. He thinks that he's going to save all those people by going to Helm's Deep. Aragorn tells him that there's 10,000 orcs coming his way. He's still a little bit cocky. Then the cockiness starts to fade. then he starts to realize that things are going bad. But you see the kingliness of Theoden by the end of this battle. Him looking,
Dude,
Aragorn
when they're
looking at
in
him
that cave and
when
it's
they're in
just
that
like,
cave.
all right,
Ride
we're
out,
gonna
bro.
ride out, you
Ride
know.
out with me. Show them, everything. And Gimli runs up to the top and blows that big old horn, and they run out there and they're sliding back and forth. And all of a sudden, you just see in the background that sun
The
cross over the
light.
mountains, and it
Because
just
it's just
blinds
such a
you.
great setup of Gandalf is just like waiting
And
until when the sun like is rising in the east or
rises east.
something,
Yep.
and then it's just like you're
Look to
like,
the east.
wait a second, yeah, look to the east when the sun rises, and then it's like, oh my god,
They're
what is
out
that?
there
And then
fighting.
there's freaking
Aragorn looks
Gandalf,
right over to the east. He
and
looks
there's
right over to
Gandalf.
the east, and there's Gandalf with his nice old white staff,
Woo!
blinding the orcs and going down with all the riders of Rohan, and then the wrecking shop and meeting on the battlefield and embracing and the whole scene from beginning to end for me is one of the greatest, if not the greatest scene in all of movies. And you can come at me all you want in the chat, guys. I don't care. But for me, it encompassed almost everything that you want to see. And that could have been Helm's Deep could have been. Trust me, I've read the books many times. Helm's Deep could have been its own movie. It could have been,
It
and
could have been, and
it would have been awesome.
yeah,
But the fact that Peter did it the way that he did it, and wrapped it around the rest of Two Towers
well, because the thing I love
it's
about
so.
that's one of the things that makes Two Towers my favorite movie is I love the fact how it's just like, you know, yeah, I got all these people with the Helm's Deep. So you want to play safe enough, you need like an army of 10,000s, and there's just like that's exactly what Saruman is building. He's building an army of tens of thousands. It's just like, oh my god, like it's one of those great things where you know more than the heroes do. You know the villains plan before the heroes do, and that's scary because you know they're going to bomb the water the aqueduct, and that's how they're gonna blow the wall because that's the weak spot in the wall, and they're gonna be able to blow it. And you're just like, no. And then Aragon figures it out just a little bit too late. He sees him running with the flare, and then he, Legolas, like just a little. If he was just a little bit earlier, Legolas could have shot him down, but sadly not.
It really is, and I mean, I flip flop. I know we were only. I flip flop between this one and
Talk about
Sam.
another scene. If you want to talk about another scene that's your favorite, go ahead.
Well, the other scene that I love so much is Sam. When Sam confronts Shelob and fights Shelob with the light and the sword and trying to rescue Frodo, and his conversation with her and just the bravery that Sam exudes at that point, and him coming and saying, you know what, and we got little glimpse of it through things, like when Strider first comes up there, and Sam's all protective, and stuff like that. So that scene with Sam and the giant spider, and him coming into his own as a heroic character, is a great scene for me as well. But Helm's Deep for me is still the best scene for me in a whole trilogy full of awesome.
In a whole trilogy, like Boromir's heroic death is probably my favorite. Other ones are I love the boat in Return of the King coming up, and Aragorn jumping down with everyone, and just the music, bum bum ba, and then the ghost army behind him as he runs in.
So good.
Also, I think one of the great moments in the trilogy is I can't carry that ring, but I can carry you. Like, yeah. Yeah.
Or Legolas jumping on the elephant and pretty much taking out that entire thing, and then jumping off.
Still only one.
Still only counts as one.
Still only counts as one. Right. Yeah, that's great.
Oh, and Faramir with his dad, what
about to be burned alive?
Yeah, and he's like burning him alive, and he's dumping the freaking oil all over him, and
then
they're
Gandalf just
with
comes in and is like,
and bang, smacks him away, and then he runs and he burns and jumps off the
he
off
sets
the
himself
tower.
on fire, and it's that yeah, and then he just runs off the tower. That guy was so.
Denethor,
I had
Lord
so
Denethor.
many questions. I was like,
what? dude, seriously?
What? I had like I feel like JonTron, where I'm just like, I have several questions.
Yeah. But
Like
I
just the
mean,
whole his entire character, I'm just like, because it's like at least with Theoden, you're like, okay, he was corrupt, he was being controlled by Saruman. Like I get that. This guy, like, is he being controlled or is he just a dick? Like I just had several questions after watching Return of the King, and I
yeah.
I I still don't really have the answers. And someone's probably gonna be like, well, in the book, if you read the book, and I'm like, man, it took me this many years to rewatch the movies. Probably
In
not gonna
in
be reading the books anytime soon.
in our
Spark notes,
in
maybe.
our lives, man, with all the stuff that we do online and all the stuff that we're trying to produce and stuff like that, it's really hard for me. Like I have an amazing leather bound copy of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, all combined into one.
Nah.
Um, I can tell you from experience or from my own life, it's there, that spine hasn't seen one page turn in it ever. It is
Bro,
like it was on the books, like it was
it's
on the bookshelf.
hard.
Now, yeah, I've read them. I read the Hobbit. I think
I
it was
read the Hobbit.
seven.
I read the Hobbit with my sister because the reason why I remember that, because now the thing I like now is we've done all the segment we talked about for character movie. Now we're just gonna, until we pretty much retire, we're just gonna talk about Lord of the Rings.
No,
For everyone watching, just enjoy a old school lover and a new school lover just talking about these movies. I remember I read The Hobbit with my sister because we had read through not all but most of the Harry Potter books that were out at the time, and then it was like Lord of the Rings books she knew at that age was like a little bit too much for me. But The Hobbit, it's one book, it's a small adventure, which you somehow turned into 3 films. Like the entire purpose. That's the thing that cracks me up is like it's literally called From There and Back Again. Like it's not supposed to be a trilogy. It's one which I remember I really did enjoy the Hobbit book. I remember I really did like it. Now everyone's gonna be like, well, now you gotta watch the Hobbit movies. Maybe one day. Um, yeah, Lord of the Rings has just always been that interesting franchise where it's like I didn't really see it when I was a kid. Then when I got into high school, I did watch them, and I think they were just too hyped for me. In fact, that was the issue. I think so many people were like, "Oh my God, Matt, Lord of the Rings! Like you're gonna love Lord of the Rings. It's gonna be your favorite. Like I know what you like. You're gonna love it." And then I watched them, and I was like, "Eh." Like they were good. Like they were well made movies. I never said they were bad movies, but they just never hit me. But I'm not sure if I think it's just been time. I think it's just been time where it's separated from everyone constantly going, "Oh my God, Matt, you haven't seen Lord of the Rings? You're gonna love it. It's gonna be your favorite. It's this, it's that." And now I watch them on my own. I think that was the thing too, was I didn't do it as a dare. I didn't do it for a show. Like I did it just I'm gonna watch this. And now I love these movies quite a bit, and I have yet to rewatch them. Of course, I've watched scenes, like on YouTube, like I do with the Star Wars movies. I've watched Poromir's death a couple of times because it's probably my favorite scene in the entire trilogy because it's amazing. I've listened to Into the West all the time on my phone. Which, by the way, that was the thing. I remember when I was watching Two Towers, I was like, "Is that Dr. McCoy?" And then I like IMDb it. I was like, "Oh my God, it is! It's Carl Urban. What is he doing? He's really that old? I thought he was a young guy, but apparently not. He's been around for a while."
He's been around
Um,
for a while. Yep.
so what are
But I mean,
your not
that's
like
not
wrap up
the
thoughts, but what are more your thoughts about the trilogy? Like this is literally Sandy. This is just freeform. Talk until you
yeah.
don't want to talk anymore.
The trick is I'll be totally honest, is that you and I aren't very dissimilar when it comes to that. Not with Lord of the Rings, but with one of my other favorite book series, I was not into Harry Potter at all. I wasn't. People were telling me,
How
"Oh, you got
dare
to read this.
you!
You got to read this. You got to read it." And I was like, "Nah, man, nah, I don't care. You just, I don't care about all the hype, blah 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 blah." And the minute I read one of the books, I was hooked forever. And it's now one of my favorite movie franchises, one of my favorite movie franchises of all time, easily in
I
my
love
top
it.
five. And so yeah, oftentimes we don't always jump on the wagon, like, and I don't say bandwagon because no, we just don't jump on the wagon that's going by the first time. But that's the beautiful thing
No,
about wagons and buses and trains. They always
they
come
always come
back
back,
around.
and I think the fascinating thing is um to not self promote here too much, but as someone who hosts a show called Second Look, it's this fascinating thing with movies, and this is just from talking to people and having now experienced it for the rings, which is sometimes hype is a good thing, and sometimes hype is a bad thing. I'm sure there are dozens of people who never saw the Lord of the Rings movies, and their friends were like, "You're gonna love it, you're gonna love it." They sat down, they watched it, and they loved it. But I think it's this thing with, and I don't care if it's a book, a video game, a band, a movie. I think we all, the things we like and the things we enjoy, it's all about when we come to them. It's the mindset that we come to them in. It's what are we willing to accept? What are we not willing to accept? What can we understand? Like, I love The Godfather. I think The Godfather is one of the greatest films ever made. I'm pretty certain if I saw The Godfather when I was 5, I would not think that because I was not in a mindset to be able to handle it.
That's right.
I think that's what it is you just, things will just come to you. And Lord of the Rings for me was always that most fascinating one of, it's just like, for whatever reason, I was always so bullheaded and stubborn about not rewatching them. I think not because I was afraid that I would like them. I think it was more just like, I don't. It wasn't because I wanted to be different. I think it was literally just like I didn't like them. No, like a second viewing's not going to change that. Like, I'm still not going to like them.
Yeah.
So that is my little. If you are someone, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, whatever. If you're someone who has had that, I would say rewatch it. Because what is the worst thing that can happen? You still don't like it. That
That's
is
right.
literally the worst thing that can happen to you, is you watch the movie again and you go, oh no, it still doesn't work for me. What's a great thing that can happen? You can watch it and go, oh my god, this is an amazing movie. I love this. I want to own this. I want to watch this. That happened with me recently with Solo. Solo hopped on my rankings because it came on Netflix. I sat down, I watched it, and I accepted it for the film it is. And yeah, it has things that I'm not a fan of, but it is one of the most rewatchable Star Wars movies for me now. I watch that thing on Netflix all the time. I put it on. It's a fun ride. I still hate LV. I don't like that character, but I don't like the, giving Han a last name. But for the most part, the whole, I think it's a great, fun movie, and Lord of the Rings more so. I think this is one of the I will still say, maybe this is still my stubborn bullheadedness. The Adventures of Robin Hood with Errol Flynn, I still think is the definitive fantasy movie for me. It still is the movie that I would say is my favorite fantasy film, because I don't say Star Wars is a fantasy movie. Some people do, I don't. But Lord of the Rings is definitely one of the greatest film trilogies. It is a series that I'm glad I revisited, and I'm looking forward to what I'm sure to be multiple rewatches in the future. Sandy, what are
Absolutely.
your wrap up thoughts, I guess, on Lord of the Rings?
I will say this when I think about the Lord of the Rings. I've always been a very big fan of the books and the trilogy, and even the Hobbit trilogy. But I'll get to that in just a quick second. Um, I became a bigger fan because of one person. And that one person is Robert Parker,
Mm.
fellow member of Take Three, fellow member of Full Metal. Robert's love for these movies made me want to love them more because he loved them so much. That's why I suggest people, you know what, if you're on Letterboxd, if you're on, reviewer critic sites or anything like that, you don't always have to listen to them, but listen to somebody that who likes a movie. And if it doesn't matter what the movie is, but if somebody really, really likes a movie, case in point, I shouldn't even bring this up, but I'm going to do it anyway.
It's a Rhyme and Reason exclusive here, guys.
Not really. It's
okay.
It's a very, very badly kept secret all over the interwebs here. I am a huge Ready Player One fan. I loved that movie a lot. It was
you jest, Sandy.
It was my favorite movie last year. I don't care what anybody says. It was my favorite movie, but Matt hadn't seen it, so Matt didn't know what I was talking about. But when I told him, and talked to him about my love for the movie and how much I loved it, Matt's response was, "I'm going to go out and find it, and I'm going to go and watch it." And once he did, he loved it. He really enjoyed it. He came right to me. He said, "Man, dude, that movie was awesome. I loved it. It was fantastic." And it's not because of me, but because I loved it so much, Matt was willing to give it a shot, and he learned that he actually really enjoyed it. So I was able to go back after listening to Robert talk so much about how much he loved The Lord of the Rings. I was able to go back and almost look through the movie through his eyes as somebody who loves it, who just absolutely loves every minute of it. And I found that I found a new appreciation for it, which brings me to the Hobbit trilogy. Yes, we brought it up. It's one book. It's a tiny little book. It could have been one movie, and Peter Jackson, God bless him, God love him. But the simple fact is that you really stretched that movie out, and you wanted the cash, and that's fun.
Hey, and you know what? Here's the thing: when I sing that, I don't blame him. Hollywood's a business. If you can get that cha-ching, cha-ching, you should, and he did.
And he did. So there's
okay. I'm not going to fault him. You found a way to make the money.
as a fan, I sit back and I go, dude, you could have made such a better movie in 2 than you did in 3, but I get it and I understand what you did. That being fact, because of people like Robert Parker, who, when most people would say, "I hate the Hobbit trilogy. I hate it. It sucks. It blows. It sucks." Robert was like, "You know what? It's not as bad as you guys think it is. It's actually pretty good in a lot of spots. You should give it a second chance." And I did. I went back and I've rewatched that Hobbit trilogy 2 or 3 more times now. And I sit back and I go, you know what? It's not as bad as I originally thought it was. It's actually, is there still some stupid moments? Yeah, just like you said about Solo. There's some stupid moments in Solo. There's some stupid moments in almost every single movie out there in the universe. And that's the point. Don't just listen to critics. Don't just listen to anybody. Listen to people who love this material. And if you believe in them, give it another shot. Because I will say, there are a lot of movies out there that both Matt and I like that we get a ton of garbage for online because we like them. Guess what I say to you people? Take a break. Just take a break from the hate and just go and rewatch the movie. And if you still hate it, I will have a conversation with you about it and sit back. I'll sit on Messenger all day with somebody and talk about why they didn't like a movie in a very respectful way. I mean, Christian Harloff or Mark Ellis say it all the time. I will have a respectful conversation about anything that you disagree with because I want to hear that feedback.
Listen, we're 100% going to figure out a time this year. We're going to have an episode of the show where it's going to be me, Sandy, Rob, and Cody, and we're going to talk about the Chris Reeve Superman movies. Because I respect Rob and Cody, and I respect their differing opinion, and I know we will not have a conversation that will be, "You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, here's why I'm right, I'm right." It's going to be, "Hey, let's have a difference of opinion. Let's just have an intelligent chat about why this doesn't work for you."
And that's right. And Robert and Cody are 2 very intelligent people who, for whatever reason, just don't identify with that particular movie or that particular character. And personally, because both Matt and I love that character in all of its iterations, would love to have a bilateral conversation between two people who don't really enjoy it and two people who really do want to enjoy it, and come together and discuss our differences
And
in a
not and
very
it's not
respectful
going to
way.
be like when we do that episode, it's not going to be a debate. It's not
No.
going to be, here are the points of why Christopher Reeves is amazing. Like, we'll talk about why Christopher Reeves works for us, and they'll talk about why he doesn't at the end of it. And this is the thing about discussion and about film specifically, is if you're having a discussion about why I'm right and you're wrong, you're having the wrong discussion. Because film should not be about that. Film should be something that's celebrated. Movies are a fascinating thing, because when you really look at it, they are moving pictures on a screen. At the most basic of it, they are moving pictures on a screen. But it's what those moving pictures can do to us. And it can be because of the music, or the acting, or the directing, or the cinematography, or just where we are in our lives when we watch it, that can gauge an emotional response from you. When I watched Ben-Hur not too long ago, I cried in my house watching that movie. You know, and it is moving pictures on a screen. And that is the thing about Rhyme and Reason, is it is a show that talks about these moving pictures on a screen, or these pages that you flip in a comic, or these episodes of TV that you watch. And it's, why do we love it? And it's not us telling you that you should love it. It's more just, here's why we love it. And if we can get just one person to rewatch Lord of the Rings, or Smallville, or the Christopher Superman movies, or something, I will feel extremely proud of what we've done here with this show. And I think this is a fantastic note to end our first episode of 2019 on.
I will finish it off with just this saying, Matt, you and I created this show for the exact reasons that you just said. We love talking movies, and we love talking about movies that generally most people aren't talking about, or have forgotten that they used to like them in the past. But the other thing that you and I do on this show, and this isn't for us to like pat ourselves on the back or be, you know, more anything, but we do it in a way that I believe is respectful towards one another. We both don't always agree. We don't always agree.
Watch the Star Wars episode.
That's right. But I respect your opinions, and you respect mine. And our fans that watch this show, I respect all of them as well. And I want them to be able to come to us and not be afraid and say, hey, I really like this episode. I totally disagree with you on this, but here's why. And I will have that conversation every single day, because we put out this content specifically to restart the conversation on these things. And you may not like The Lord of the Rings. You may not like Superman the movie. You may not like Star Wars. You may not like Star Trek. Guess what? It's okay.
That's fine. That's okay.
I get crap all the time for movies that I don't like, and that's okay too, because some people generally are pretty passionate about the things that they love. And when somebody doesn't love them, people are confused as to why. I am one of those. I get confused when people don't like a thing that I like. Why don't you? It was fun. It was an enjoyable thing to do. But that's your opinion. If Matt would have come back to me after watching Ready Player One and said, I didn't like it.
Sucks.
I would have been like, okay. I'm so glad that you watched it, Matt. Even if you didn't like it. Like, my wife hates it. She hates it. She can't stand it. She doesn't like watching it. She doesn't even like the fact that it's sitting on.
Kristen Smith rewatched Armageddon, as she did with the commentary. Yeah. She didn't like Armageddon before we did that watch along. She didn't like it afterwards, but she rewatched it because she knew how much I loved Armageddon. And guess what, guys? Spoiler alert: we're still friends.
Yep, that's exactly right. And Rhyme and Reason, I don't care where we are, what we're doing. Matt and I are going to put this out as often as we possibly can, because we love talking about movies, and we love that you guys love talking about movies. That was this whole point. So
Yeah.
when you see this episode, give it a like, give it a comment, give it something, do something. Tell me you hate it. Tell me you want to see us talk about this.
You don't
Tell us you
even
want to.
you don't even have to start the conversation with us. If you tell us your
That's right.
episode made you want to talk with your buddy about Lord of the Rings, that's awesome. The whole purpose of the show and what we're going to continue to do this year is going to be starting the conversation. Hopefully, we'll get more people on, so it's not just me and Sandy. Like I said, we are going to try to get Rob and Cody on here, or at least one of them if we can't get both. We just want to create a show where we're starting this is the genesis point. This is where the conversation starts is, oh, Lord of the Rings. Okay. And it could be with us, it could be your buddies, it could be on a messenger board, it could be on Letterboxd, wherever. We want this to start and not in like a selfish like, oh, we start the conversation, but just literal
No.
like, I haven't thought about Lord of the Rings since I saw it. I haven't thought about Superman, so I can't tell you what next week's episode is going to be, but it's going to start some sort of conversation if it's just something as simple as, hey, Sandy, what do you want to watch today?
Yeah.
So,
exactly. That's usually how our conversation starts. Is Matt will message me and say, "What do you want to do Rhyme and Reason about?" And we'll have a discussion. Or Matt will just come and say, "I just watched something. I want to float it by you." Or I'll say the exact same thing. "Hey, I just watched this. I want to talk to you about it." And that's how it comes up. We just have an interest in something, and we respect each other enough that we will have a conversation about it, and we want to enjoy it. We don't always have to agree, but we are always respectful. And that's what we're going to continue to do here. Matt, Rhyme and Reason is one of my favorite things to do. You know how I feel about you. You know how I feel about this show. We're going to keep on doing it. And, whatever our next conversation is going to be, I know it's going to be fun. And, we're here. We're here and we're back. And we're going to get this stuff out to you guys.
All right. So, Sandy, where can the good people find you online?
The good kids can find me all over the interwebs, Facebook, Twitter, Letterboxd, which I'm just getting used to now. You can follow me there, and Twitter and Facebook at srobinson1799. You can follow me there. If you want to play trivia, if you love watching the Schmodown and you think you can handle yourself, contact me on Messenger, and we can get you in a match. Full Metal Trivia does Full Metal Singles Leagues, Full Metal Teams. Full Metal Geek, if you're more into the geek culture stuff like Matt is, do that. We got Full Metal Random, Jeremy Adams' awesome creation where it's an encompassing of all of a genre of something. So if you like the 2000s, you know what? We'll give you a match in all of everything that encompasses the 2000s. Full Metal Classic, our flagship show, multiplayer format. You want to get into it? You want to test your feet? Test the water? Come and join that and do that. Plus, you can see me right here on Take 3 every Thursday with Matt lots of times and Brooklyn and Cody and us on Late Night with Take 3 on Thursdays and every Saturday here, hopefully forever with Matt. We'll be old. Well, I'll be dead and Matt will be an old man.
Wow, Sandy, that's a real positive way to end off.
He'll just have a picture of me in the background, and we'll be doing Rhyme and Reason for the next
talking
50 years. So,
yeah,
that's so that's where everybody can find me.
You guys, as always, can find me at current_Matthew on Twitter, Matt6 on YouTube, and right here as host of Second Look. New episode just went up this week on Batman Forever. Next month's episode, I got a promo up on our Facebook page. I'm going to be covering Smallville Season 2 finale, Exodus. It's my first time covering a TV show. It's going to be interesting to see how I tackle it. Please, guys, as always, like Sandy said, share, comment, start the discussion with us in the comments, start the discussion on Twitter, wherever. And as always, you can find me co-hosting Rhyme and Reason right here every Saturday on Take 3. Thank you guys so much for watching. On behalf of Sandy and myself, take care.